"You took 3 bullets for my son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, rough in a way that made her chest ache. "So I'm going to ask you something that you have every right to refuse. But I need you to know if you say no, I cannot guarantee you'll survive the week." Sarah Miller was a waitress. She owned 2 pairs of shoes. She had $200 in her checking account and a sick brother and a landlord who called a broken radiator a character feature. She had not planned on falling into the most dangerous marriage in New York City. But then she hadn't planned on the gun either. If this story already has your heart racing, subscribe right now and follow Sarah all the way to the end. Drop a comment with your city. I want to see exactly how far this story travels. She almost missed him. That's the thing nobody talks about afterward, how close it came to going the other way. How Sarah Miller, 31 years old, tired down to her bones, carrying a tray of champagne she couldn't afford to drink, almost just kept walking. Almost. The man in the black vest was standing against the east wall of the Pierre Hotel's grand ballroom, and he was completely still. That was the wrong thing. In a room full of people performing, wealth laughing too loud, gesturing too wide, making every movement count, this man was a void. He had an empty tray and he wasn't moving toward the kitchen to refill it. His eyes weren't roaming the crowd, looking for empty glasses or guests who needed attention. His eyes were fixed. Sarah followed his gaze. The boy was 15 feet away. 6 years old, dark hair, a tiny suit with a clip-on tie that had gone crooked somewhere between the car and the ballroom. He'd found the floral display near the east column and was completely absorbed in an orchid. One small finger extended, touching a petal with the kind of focused wonder that only children carry, completely unaware that the room existed beyond that flower. The man's right hand moved toward the inside of his jacket. Sarah's tray hit the marble floor. She didn't decide, her body decided. Her legs were moving before the sound of shattering crystal had finished echoing, cutting through the crowd, shoulder checking, a man in a gray suit who spilled his drink and shouted something she didn't hear. Leo. She didn't know his name. The word came out of nowhere, instinct, desperation, anything to make the boy move, and it worked. He spun around, eyes wide, startled out of his orchid trance. The man in the vest spun too. She saw the gun clear the jacket lining. She put herself between it and the boy. 3 sounds, fast, flat, businesslike. Like someone slamming a car door once, twice, 3 times. 3 places on her body lit up with something she couldn't even process as pain yet, because pain takes a second to arrive, and she was still moving, still falling, still trying to angle herself. So she took the impact and not him. Her knees hit the marble. Leo was right in front of her. Those enormous dark eyes, wide as plates, staring at her face with an expression no 6-year-old should ever wear. "It's okay," she heard herself say. Then the floor came up. Then nothing. Cheyenne. The voices came back first. Urgent, sharp, cutting through each other in Italian and English commands being issued, someone saying, "Get him out, get Leo out, now." Then a face very close. Dark eyes, not the boy's eyes. These were older, harder carrying weight that the child's hadn't had yet. A jaw so tightly set, it looked like it was holding something terrible together by force of will alone. "Stay with me." The voice was low controlled, the kind of controlled that's actual and barely controlled. "Stay with me. Do you hear me?" Sarah's mouth moved. Nothing came out. "What's your name?" the man demanded. "Tell me your name. Stay awake." Sarah, she thought, but the word was a long way from her mouth and the distance kept growing, and then soon. 14 hours later, she opened her eyes. The light was wrong, too soft, too flat, the particular beige of a room designed for recovery rather than living. There was an IV in her left arm. There was a monitor beeping in a rhythm she'd have to trust was good because she had no medical frame of reference whatsoever. And there was a man in the chair beside her bed. He was still in the same suit from the gala, jacket off, sleeves rolled. The kind of man who looked like he'd been assembled by committee to be exactly as intimidating as possible, broad-shouldered, square-jawed, completely still, with the quality of someone who had learned a long time ago how to wait. There were shadows under his eyes that hadn't been there in the 1 second she'd registered his face on the ballroom floor. He'd been there all 14 hours. She didn't know what to do with that. "Don't try to sit up," he said the moment he saw her eyes open. Not a greeting, a command, but a quiet one. "My brother," she said, her voice came out sandpaper rough, "has been notified. He's being taken care of." That's not specific enough. Something moved behind his eyes, reassessment, like he'd expected something else from her first waking seconds, and she'd surprised him. His bills have been settled. He's been moved to a private room with a dedicated care team. He's stable. She absorbed that, the weight of 8 months of double shifts and sold furniture, and lying to Danny that everything was fine, lifted in one sentence. She hated how much she wanted to cry. She didn't cry. "Thank you," she said carefully. "That's more than I expected. It's the least I can do." There it was again. Least. She filed that word. "I'm Lorenzo Caruso," he said. "I know who you are." She didn't. She'd figured it out from the way the entire room had rearranged itself around his entrance. "You don't need a name to understand gravity. Then you understand my world." "Enough of it." He leaned forward, elbows on knees, eyes steady on hers, and she had the distinct sensation of being measured. Not judged, not assessed for weakness, but genuinely measured the way you measure something you're trying to figure out how to carry. "My son would be dead," he said, "if you hadn't moved. Anyone would have. No, flat, final. They wouldn't. I had 12 security personnel in that room, trained men, and none of them moved. You moved." A pause. A waitress from Queens who had never met my son, had no reason to protect him, and no way to survive the aftermath. The word survive sat between them. "I need to ask you something," he said. "You already helped Danny. You don't. I need to ask you to be my wife." The monitor beeped. Sarah stared at him. "I'm going to need you to say that again," she said, slowly. "You heard me." "I heard sounds. I'm not confident they formed the sentence I think they formed." His jaw shifted, not quite a smile, but something in the neighborhood of one. "The people who sent that man last night, they know your face now. They watched you take bullets for my son. In my world, that means you matter to me. And anyone who matters to me becomes a target." Target. Her heartbeat did something involuntary. "I didn't ask to be part of your world," she said. "I know." And the way he said it quiet without deflection made it worse somehow. "I'm sorry, truly, but the only thing that puts you completely beyond reach is my name. If you become a Caruso, Vincent Russo cannot touch you without starting a war he knows he cannot win. And if I say no," he didn't look away, "then I do everything in my power to protect you without the formal arrangement. But I won't lie to you, it's not the same level of protection, and you deserve to know that going in." Sarah stared at the IV in her arm. She thought about the gun. She thought about how easily she might not be waking up right now. She thought about Leo's face, 6 years old, that crooked tie, the way he'd looked at her with pure terror, and then something worse than terror, guilt. The look of a child who already understood that something terrible had happened because of him. "Tell me about the man who sent the shooter," she said. Lorenzo's expression didn't change, but something behind it did. "Vincent Russo, he's been trying to weaken our position for several years. Leo was the most direct path to breaking me. He targeted a 6-year-old. Yes. To hurt you. Yes." The word landed in her chest like a stone in water. "Leo's mother," she said carefully, "died 4 years ago." His voice was even. Too even, the kind of even that takes years of practice. He doesn't remember her well. He's young enough that the memories are more feeling than image. "Who does he have?" "Me, my sister. 3 men I trust absolutely." A pause. "That's the whole of his world." Sarah turned this over. She looked at this man, this dangerous, exhausted, clearly devastated man, and she saw something she hadn't expected. Not a king surveying his territory. A father at the absolute end of his rope, trying to do the only thing he could think of. "I have conditions," she said. He didn't blink. "Name them." "Danny's care. Not a favor, not a gesture, a legal guarantee. Written. Regardless of what happens between us. Done. My money is my money. Whatever I earn, however I earn it. Of course, Opano. I won't be a performance. I won't stand next to you and be silent while you use me as furniture." Something sharpened behind his eyes. Not offense, something closer to recognition. "I don't want furniture," he said. "I want Leo to have someone real. Someone who will actually see him, not manage him." That's a surprisingly vulnerable thing to say. "I've found honesty keeps people alive longer than cleverness. Even in your world, especially in my world." She looked at him, he looked at her. If I say yes, she said slowly, I need to understand what I'm walking into. Not a sanitized version. The real thing. The real thing might be harder to hear than the sanitized version. I took 3 bullets an hour into knowing you. I think I can handle information. The corner of his mouth moved, just barely. Fair point, he told her. Not everything she understood instinctively that everything was going to take much longer than one hospital conversation, but enough. The Russo family, the power struggle, the territories and the alliances, and the particular dangerous moment they were in, where Vincent Russo had decided that the fastest way to win was to take everything Enzo cared about. Leo was everything Enzo cared about. So by marrying you, Sarah said when he finished, I become protected by every resource I have. And Leo Serna, Lorenzo's jaw tightened. Leo gains something I cannot provide by myself. She waited. A mother, he said quietly, or something close enough that it matters. The monitor beeped steadily. Sarah felt the word land somewhere deep and undefended inside her. Somewhere she hadn't known was still open. She looked at the ceiling. She thought, I am a waitress. I have $200 and no insoles in my shoes. And I was planning on checking my voicemails and hoping Danny's latest results were okay. She thought the world I woke up in this morning does not exist anymore. She thought that little boy's face. She turned her head. Okay, she said. He went completely still. Okay. Yes, I'll marry you. Lorenzo Caruso, who had walked into that ballroom and made 100 powerful people hold their collective breath, said nothing for a moment that stretched long enough to hear the monitor. The distant hallway sounds the city outside the window. Then, thank you. 2 words. No armor behind them. Just 2 words said by a man who was not accustomed to needing anything from anyone. Sarah turned back to the ceiling. Don't thank me until after I meet your enemies. That's the door open. Not a knock, no hesitation. Just a small figure in the door, a dark-haired and breathless, clearly having pushed past whoever was supposed to keep him in the hallway. Is she awake? Leo demanded, eyes cutting straight to the bed. Papa, I've been waiting for so long. Leo. Lorenzo was on his feet. But she's awake. He was already crossing the room, already stopping himself just at the edge of the bed with the careful breaking of a child who had been told very specifically about hospitals and had decided that the rule probably had a reasonable exception somewhere around the person who saved your life. He looked at Sarah with eyes so wide they seemed to take up half his face. You're really awake. I'm really awake, Sarah confirmed. I thought. His voice caught. He was 6. He was trying very hard to be brave and making a reasonable go of it. Papa said you were sleeping because of the loud things. Because of me. Listen to me. Her voice came out softer than she'd planned. Come here. He came slowly, carefully, the way you approach something you're not sure is real. My name is Sarah, she said. What happened was not your fault. Not one part of it. Adults make choices. I made a choice. Do you understand me? He stared at her. A war crossing his small face, guilt and hope fighting each other in real time. Slowly he nodded. Good. She held his gaze. Now I need you to remember that, because I'm going to be around for a while and I don't want you carrying something that was never yours to carry. Deal. Leo's chin wobbled exactly once. Then he reached out both hands very gently and wrapped them around her uninjured hand. Just held it. Said nothing. Just held it with the complete unguarded trust of a child who had decided without deliberation that this person was safe. Sarah's throat closed. She looked up at Lorenzo. He was watching his son with an expression she recognized finally for what it was, not the face of a mafia boss, not the face of a man calculating his next move. The face of a father who had been terrified for 14 hours and was only now in this exact moment beginning to breathe again. This, Sarah thought, this is what I said yes to, not the protection, not the title, not even Danny's care, though she was grateful down to her marrow. This small pair of hands wrapped around hers, this exhausted man across the room who loved this child more than he loved his own breath. This choice that was completely insane and somehow already beginning to feel like the truest thing she'd ever done. Outside, New York kept moving. Inside that hospital room, Sarah Miller, waitress survivor, accidental queen of the most dangerous family in the city, held a little boy's hands and felt something shift inside her chest that she had no name for yet. She would find the name for it later. Right now, it was enough just to be alive. The word wife felt different in the daylight. In the hospital room at 2 in the morning with Leo's hands wrapped around hers, and Lorenzo standing across the room looking like a man who had just remembered how to breathe, it had felt almost logical. A solution to a problem, a decision made in the particular clarity that comes from having nearly died. By the time the morning nurse came in to check her vitals, Sarah had started to understand what she had actually agreed to. "You're going to need to sign some paperwork," Lorenzo said. He was back in the chair jacket on now, fully reconstructed into whatever version of himself he presented to the world before 8 a.m. Leo had been taken to get breakfast by a man named Marco, who had the build of a refrigerator and the careful gentleness of someone who had been specifically hired to not frighten children. "Legal documentation. The marriage will be registered today." Sarah stared at him. "Today? The sooner your name changes, the sooner you are protected. I haven't even been discharged." "You won't be. Not today." He met her eyes. "The ceremony will happen here. A judge is coming at noon." "A judge," she repeated. "I know people." "Of course you do." She pressed her fingers against her temple, felt the edges of a headache forming. "Lorenzo, I agreed to this. I'm not backing out. But you need to understand that I am a person with a life, and I cannot just, there are things I need to do. I need to call Danny myself. I need to talk to my manager at the Pierre. Your manager has been informed that you won't be returning." She went very still. "Excuse me, your position has been, you had me fired. Resigned. The paperwork reflects a voluntary." "I didn't volunteer anything." Her voice came out sharper than she intended, and she didn't care. "That was my job, my income. You had no right to touch that without asking me." Lorenzo was quiet for 1 second. 2. "You're right," he said. She blinked. She'd been bracing for a counter-argument. "I overstepped," he said. "It won't happen again." He said it like a man who rarely said those words and had decided this particular moment warranted them. "But I need you to understand, going back to the Pierre puts you in a public space with crowds with access points we can't secure. It would be an invitation." "I understand the reasoning," Sarah said. "That doesn't mean you get to make the decision for me." "No," he agreed, "it doesn't." She looked at him. He looked back. Neither of them blinked. "I want to call Danny," she said finally. "Myself, for the judge, before anything." "Of course." He reached into his jacket and set his phone on the tray table beside her. "Use mine. Yours was damaged." She picked up the phone, looked at it, looked at him. "Some privacy," she said. He stood without a word and walked out. Sarah dialed her brother's number from memory. He picked up on the second ring, and the sound of his voice, rough and confused and immediately worried, hit her somewhere behind her sternum that she hadn't thought to protect. "Sarah, this isn't your number. What's—" "I'm okay," she said immediately. "I need you to know that first. I'm okay." A pause that lasted too long. Define okay. "I'm in a hospital, but I'm okay. I'm going to be okay." "A hospital. Sarah, Danny." She kept her voice even with effort. "I need you to listen to me. A lot has changed in the last 24 hours, and I need you to just listen. And then when I finish, you can ask me anything you want." She heard him breathe. The particular way he breathed when he was scared and trying not to show it. The same way she breathed when she was scared. The Miller family response to crisis: hold it together and ask questions later. "Okay," Danny said. "I'm listening." She told him. Not everything, not the marriage, not yet, not over the phone, when he'd just woken up and she was still calibrating how much truth he could absorb at once. She told him she'd been at a work event, there'd been an incident, she'd been hurt, but was stable. She told him the hospital bills were handled, that he'd been moved to a better room, that the care team was real incompetent. Silence on his end. Then, "Sarah, how did the bills get paid?" "Someone helped us." "Someone?" "A person I met." "A person you met." His voice had taken on that particular edge, Danny's edge, the one that meant he was about to be both grateful and furious simultaneously. "Does this person have a name?" "We'll talk about it when I'm discharged." "Was it Sarah Ann Miller, Daniel James Miller?" she said firmly. "I have 3 bullet wounds and a headache. Let me have today." Another silence. Longer. Are you actually okay? He said finally, and his voice had gone quiet in a way that meant he wasn't asking about the wounds. I don't know yet, she said honestly, but I'm going to be. She heard him exhale long, slow, the sound of someone releasing something they'd been holding too tight. Okay, he said quietly. Okay, I'm here. I know. Her throat tightened. I'll call you tonight. She hung up, stared at the phone, gave herself exactly 30 seconds to feel all of it. The fear, the grief for the life she'd had 24 hours ago, the strange and terrifying shape of the one she'd apparently chosen. And then she set the phone down. The door opened. Lorenzo came back in, read her face in 1 second flat, and said nothing. He sat down, waited. The judge at noon, Sarah said. Fine. He nodded. But I want one thing on the record, she said. You ever make a decision about my life without asking me again, job, finances, phone, anything, and I will make your life very difficult. Are we clear? Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment. We're clear, he said. Good. She settled back against the pillows. Tell me what happens after noon. The judge was a small, dry woman named Hartley, who had clearly done enough unusual legal work for the Caruso family that nothing in this situation appeared to register as remarkable. She asked the necessary questions. She produced the necessary documents. She witnessed the necessary signatures with the brisk efficiency of someone who had at 2 o'clock and was going to make it. Sarah signed her name on a line that changed everything. Lorenzo signed beside her. Judge Hartley collected the paperwork, said congratulations, in the tone of someone noting a weather pattern, and left. Leo, who had been sitting in the corner of a chair, eating a granola bar, with the intense focus of someone pretending not to be paying attention, looked up. Does that mean you're staying? He asked. That means I'm staying, Sarah said. He went back to his granola bar, but she caught the small private thing that crossed his face before he could hide it, and it hit her square in the chest. Lorenzo caught it too. She could tell by the way he looked at his son, that expression she still didn't have a name for, fierce and helpless in equal measure. There's a car outside, Lorenzo said, looking back at Sarah. When you're discharged tomorrow, you'll be taken to the house. Marco will be your primary contact. He can answer most logistical questions. Where will you be? I have business ought to attend to. His voice shifted slightly on the last word, just slightly, just enough to tell her that business was doing a lot of work in that sentence. Russo, she said. He didn't confirm it. Didn't need to. How bad? She asked. Manageable. He stood. You should rest. The doctor wants you through another round of monitoring before tomorrow. Lorenzo, he paused. Don't die, she said. I didn't agree to be a widow. Something moved across his face, not the almost smile from before, something more complicated. Something that looked for just a second like she'd surprised him in a way that actually got through. I'll do my best, he said. He left. Sarah looked at Leo. Leo looked at Sarah. Your dad is very dramatic, she said. Leo considered this seriously. He thinks he's not, he said, but he is. For the first time in what felt like a week, Sarah laughed. It pulled at her ribs, and she didn't care. The Caruso house was not a house. Sarah had been imagining something impressive, Manhattan money, floor-to-ceiling windows, doormen, and uniforms. She had not been imagining a compound. That was the only word for it. A sprawling building in a part of the city that somehow managed to feel both completely present and completely private. The kind of architecture that said old money in a different language than the gala had. She arrived in a wheelchair she didn't want, in a set of clothes Lorenzo had apparently had sent to the hospital, simple, expensive, exactly her size, which bothered her slightly, and was met at the entrance by a woman who looked 65, moved like 50, and regarded Sarah with the kind of assessing stare that felt like a physical thing. This is Rosa, Marco said from behind her. She runs the house. Rosa looked at Sarah. Sarah looked at Rosa. You're thinner than the last one, Rosa said. I wasn't aware there was a standard, Sarah said. Rosa's expression shifted exactly 1 millimeter. You'll need to eat. The doctor's list is on your bed. You'll follow it. She turned and walked inside, clearly expecting them to follow. Marco leaned down slightly. That means she approves of you, he murmured. The last one she didn't approve of, she didn't speak to at all. Wonderful, Sarah said. Her room was on the second floor. It was large, furnished in a way that was thoughtful without being overwhelming, and had a window that overlooked a courtyard where she could hear faintly Leo's voice and what sounded like a small argument with someone about the rules of a game. She sat on the edge of the bed and took stock. 3 wounds healing, 1 marriage legally binding, 1 child who had decided she was safe, 1 husband who was currently somewhere in the city doing things she didn't want to think about too carefully. Her phone, a new one. She'd found it on the bed beside the doctor's list, already set up with her contacts transferred, buzzed. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Hello, sir?" "Mrs. Caruso," said a voice she didn't recognize. Male smoothed the particular smoothness of a man who had practiced being charming until it became automatic. "Congratulations on your marriage." Sarah went completely still. "Who is this?" she said. "Someone who wants you to understand your situation very clearly." A pause. "You're a smart woman. I can tell from what you did at the gala, brave, quick, emotionally driven. Those are interesting qualities, useful ones in the right circumstances." "I'll ask one more time," she said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Who is this?" "A friend," the voice said pleasantly. "I'd like to stay a friend. The question is whether Lorenzo will allow that." Another pause, delicate as a blade. "He has a habit of keeping the people around him very close, very controlled. You should ask yourself whether the cage you've walked into was built for your protection or his convenience." Her hand was tight around the phone. "What do you want?" "Nothing yet," the man said. "I just wanted you to know that you have options, that there are people who would be very interested in your perspective, your observations, your position, if you ever find the walls closing in. Tell me your name or I'm ending this call." A soft sound, almost a laugh. "You'll know my name soon enough, Mrs. Caruso. In the meantime, welcome to the family." The line went dead. Sarah stared at the phone for 3 full seconds. Then she walked out of the room down the hall and found Marco standing at the top of the stairs. "I need to reach Lorenzo," she said. "Now." Marco looked at her face. Whatever he saw there made him reach for his phone without asking a single question. Lorenzo arrived home 4 hours earlier than expected. He came into the room where Sarah was sitting upright, back straight, not resting the way the doctor had told her to rest, and looked at her face and said, "Tell me." She told him, verbatim. Every word she could remember in the order it had been said, the exact tone and timing. She'd spent the 4 hours going over it until it was fixed. Lorenzo stood very still through all of it. When she finished, the silence lasted long enough to be uncomfortable. "The new phone," he said finally. "I had it set up through a clean channel. That number shouldn't have been accessible." "Well," Sarah said, "someone accessed it." His jaw tightened. Description of the voice. "Male, 50-something, maybe older, very composed, the kind of composed that's practiced." He said, she stopped, quoted it directly. "There are people who would be very interested in your perspective, your observations, your position." "He was asking you to spy," Lorenzo said flatly. "He was planting the idea," Sarah said. "There's a difference. He wasn't asking yet. He was just opening a door." Lorenzo looked at her. "Most people wouldn't make that distinction." "I told you I wasn't furniture." He was quiet again. Then in a different voice, lower, something careful in it. "What did you think when he said those things? About the piano?" Sarah met his eyes. "I thought he was trying to make me doubt a decision I'd already made, and that if he was doing that, it was because I made the right one." Lorenzo held her gaze for a long moment. "That was Russo," he said, "Vincent Russo. He called you personally." The name landed differently now that she had a voice to put to it. "He knows your number," Lorenzo continued, and something dangerous had entered his voice. Not loud, never loud. She was learning that about him, that the quieter he got, the more serious it was. "Which means he has someone inside." He paused. "Closer than I thought." "Inside your house?" Sarah asked. He didn't answer immediately. That was an answer. "Leo," Sarah said. "Leo is safe." "Lorenzo," she leaned forward, ignoring the pull in her side. "If Russo has someone inside this house and Leo is in this house, I know. 2 words each, carrying about 100 pounds. I'm handling it." "How puedo?" He said her name like he was putting a hand on her shoulder without touching her. Firm, grounding. "I've been managing threats to this family for 15 years. I know how to find what doesn't belong." He paused. "But I need to know when Russo called, what number showed on your screen." "Unknown." "And your instinct was immediately to tell me." Yes, she frowned. Was that wrong? Oh? No, he said. It was exactly right. Which means he either misjudged you completely or he stopped. Or what? She asked. He looked at her. Or he called to see what you'd do, to measure your loyalties. The room went quiet. So this was a test, Sarah said slowly. For me. For both of us, Lorenzo said. He wanted to know if you'd come to me, and he wanted to know how fast. He'll know now. Yes. Lorenzo's expression hadn't changed. He will. Sarah processed this. So by telling you immediately, I chose a side, Lorenzo said quietly, publicly, irrevocably. He paused. I want you to understand what that means. It means his attention is on you now, not as a pawn, as a player. I already had 3 bullets, Sarah said. I'm not sure being a player is significantly more dangerous than what I've been so far. Something crossed Lorenzo's face that she couldn't quite read. You're not afraid, he said. Not quite a question. I'm terrified, she said honestly, but I've been terrified and still had to show up for a long time. Fear doesn't stop anything. He looked at her for a long moment, a look that had different layers to it. Evaluation, something that might have been the very early edge of respect, and underneath both of those something she wasn't ready to look at too directly. I'm going to find the leak, he said. Tonight, I need you to behave as if nothing happened, dinner with Leo normal routine. Can you do that? Yes. If anyone in this house says anything, asks you anything unusual, probes, I'll remember it exactly and tell you, she said, verbatim, like tonight. He held her gaze. Good. He turned to go. Lorenzo. He stopped. Who knew about the phone? Who set it up? He turned back slowly. 3 people. Then you already know where to start looking. A beat. 2 beats. Yes, he said quietly. I do. He left. Sarah sat alone in the room and listened to the house settle around her. Somewhere below, she could hear Leo's voice again, and Rosa's, and the particular rhythm of an evening that was trying to be ordinary despite everything moving beneath its surface. She thought about what Lorenzo had said. Chose a side. Publicly, irrevocably. She thought I chose it the moment I moved in that ballroom. She just hadn't known it yet. From down the hall came the sound of small feet running, and then Leo appeared in the doorway, slightly out of breath. Dark hair escaping whatever it had been combed into, this morning a piece of paper in his hand. I drew something, he announced the way 6-year-olds announce things completely without preamble. Fully confident this was important information. Do you want to see? Sarah looked at this small boy who had no idea that the house he lived in was quietly becoming a battlefield, who had no idea that his father was 3 rooms away, working out who had betrayed them, who had no idea of any of it, and felt something shift in her chest like a door swinging wide open. Absolutely, she said. Come show me. He climbed up onto the bed beside her with careful deliberation, making sure not to jostle her, and spread the paper flat between them. It was a drawing crayon ambitious in scope, if not in accuracy. A stick figure in a white shirt next to a smaller stick figure. Above them in large, uneven letters, Emmy and Sarah. He'd spelled her name right. This is very good, she said carefully. I know, he said without false modesty. Rosa said I should give it to you because it's yours, because it's of you. She's right. Sarah looked at the drawing. Can I keep it? That's why I brought it, Leo said with the patient tone of someone explaining something obvious. Sarah looked at the uneven letters above those 2 stick figures. Me and Sarah, not me and my father's wife, not me and the lady from the hospital. Just me and Sarah side by side, both of them upright, both of them taking up space in the same piece of paper. She folded it carefully and held it in both hands. Outside the door, the house hummed with things she couldn't see, danger and loyalty and betrayal, and the quiet machinery of a war she'd walked into with her eyes wide open. Somewhere in it, Lorenzo Caruso was hunting for a traitor who might be standing at the dinner table in an hour. And here in this room, a 6-year-old boy was studying her face with his father's eyes, waiting to see if she liked his drawing. It's perfect, Sarah said. Leo nodded satisfied. I know, he said again. And for a moment, just a moment, nothing else existed. The traitor's name was Daniel Reyes, and he had worked for the Caruso family for 11 years. Sarah found out at breakfast, not because Lorenzo told her he'd been gone before she woke, which she was beginning to understand was simply how he operated moving through the hours before dawn, like the darkness was his natural habitat. She found out because Rosa set a cup of coffee in front of her, sat down across the table without being invited, and said in the flat tone of someone reporting weather, "They found the one who gave out your number. He's been removed." Sarah looked up from the coffee. "Removed." "From the house," Rosa said, firmly, with the particular emphasis of a woman who had learned the wisdom of not asking follow-up questions. Sarah decided to adopt the same wisdom. For now. "How long had he been working here?" she asked instead. 11 years. Rosa's jaw tightened slightly. "He attended Leo's 4th birthday party. He drove Elena to her last chemotherapy appointment." A pause. Elena was Mr. Caruso's wife. The coffee cup was warm in Sarah's hands. She held it. "Does Leo know?" she asked. "No, and he won't." Rosa stood smoothing her apron with a decisive movement of someone closing a subject. "Leo has enough to carry." Sarah watched her go. She thought about 11 years, about birthday parties and hospital drives, and a betrayal planted so deep it had roots in grief. She thought about what it cost Lorenzo to look at that, to process it in whatever hours he'd been awake, before she opened her eyes, and then to function, to keep moving. She was still thinking about it when Leo appeared in the doorway in his school uniform tie, already crooked backpack hanging off one shoulder at the angle that suggested it had been put on in a hurry. "Rosa says you have to eat the eggs," he announced. "She made them specifically. If you don't eat them, she'll make a face." "She's already making a face," Sarah said. "A different face," Leo clarified seriously. Sarah ate the eggs. Mom. Lorenzo came home at noon. Sarah heard him before she saw him. Voices in the entrance hall, low and quick, the particular cadence of men reporting and being answered. Then a door. Then silence. She was in the library. She'd found it that morning. 3 walls of books and a window seat that was doing significant damage to her opinion of this place, being only a cage when he appeared in the doorway. He looked like a man who had been awake for 30 hours and intended to be awake for 30 more. "Rosa told me about Reyes," Sarah said before he could speak. He came into the room, sat down in the chair across from her with the careful movement of someone whose body had stopped asking permission and started demanding rest. She shouldn't have. She was right to. Sarah set down the book she hadn't been reading. "I needed to know." He looked at her. "Are you frightened?" "I was frightened when the gun came out," she said. "This is different. This is information. I can work with information." Most people don't think of a security breach as information they can work with. "Most people weren't waitresses for 9 years, she said. "You spend that long reading rooms, you stop being afraid of what's in them." Something in his expression shifted. Not the almost smile, not the reassessment look, something quieter. Something that landed differently. "Russo is moving faster than I anticipated," he said. "The gala was supposed to be a contained action. Quick, clean leverage. What he didn't plan for." He stopped. "Me," Sarah said. "You." He said it simply. He didn't plan for you, and now he's improvising, which makes him more dangerous, not less. Improvising men make different kinds of mistakes. He paused. And different kinds of decisions. What kind of decision is he making right now? Lorenzo's eyes held hers steadily. "There's an event, 3 days from now. A formal dinner there. Ashworth Foundation Gala annual fundraiser attended by every person of consequence in this city. Russo will be there. He attends every year." He paused. "As of this morning, he's made it known through the appropriate channels that he expects to see the new Mrs. Caruso." The room went very quiet. "He wants to look at me," Sarah said. "He wants to assess you," Lorenzo said, "to see what I've brought into my house, whether you're a liability or a complication." "And which am I? Neither." Lorenzo's voice was flat and certain, but he doesn't know that yet, and what he sees at that dinner will determine his next move. Sarah looked at her hands. She thought about Vincent Russo's voice on the phone that practiced smoothness, the way he'd laid the hook so gently, barely a pressure. A man who had been doing this for a long time and believed he was very good at it. "You want me to let the way go," she said. "I want you to choose," he said. "There's a difference." She looked up. "What does it look like if I don't go?" "It looks like I'm hiding you, which looks like I'm ashamed, which looks like weakness." He said it without self-pity, just laying out the math. "In my world, weakness is an invitation. And if I go, then Russo sees that I'm not hiding anything, that you're not a secret or a liability. That you're, enfin, he paused, finding the word. Chosen. I'm still in physical therapy, she said. My shoulder isn't fully mobile. I know. I've never attended anything like that. As a guest, I've worked 100 events like it. I know that too. Lorenzo, she leveled him with a look. Are you asking me to walk into a room full of people who want you dead on a shoulder that's still healing 3 weeks after I was shot to perform a version of myself that I've never had to perform before? He held her gaze. Yes. Okay, she said. He blinked, just barely. Okay. I told you, she said. I can work with information. She picked up the book again. But I need to know everyone who will be in that room. Every name, every relationship to you, every potential problem. I need to know what I'm walking into. I'll have a briefing prepared. Not a briefing, she said. You telling me, tonight, at dinner. She paused. Leo too, if it's appropriate. A long moment. Leo doesn't attend those conversations, Lorenzo said carefully. Then just us, Sarah said. But I want to hear it from you, not a report. Something moved across his face that she was beginning to recognize the specific expression he wore when she'd done something he hadn't predicted, and he was quietly recalibrating. Tonight, he said, dinner. Good. She turned a page she hadn't read, and Lorenzo's sleep, even 2 hours. You're no use to anyone running on nothing. He stood, paused. You sound like Rosa, he said. Rosa is clearly the most intelligent person in this house, Sarah said. I'm choosing to take that as a compliment. She heard what might have been a sound of quiet amusement as he walked out. Dinner that night was the most normal and the most surreal hour of Sarah's life so far, which was working against significant competition. Leo had decided with the absolute authority of a 6-year-old who has discovered someone new to talk to that Sarah needed a complete briefing on everything important, his school, his teacher, whose name was Ms. Park and who was excellent except about the homework his 3 best friends, his opinion on various vegetables, complex and well-reasoned, and the ongoing situation with a boy named Marcus who kept touching his things without asking. Did you tell Marcus to stop? Sarah asked. I told him it wasn't polite, Leo said, and he did it again. The next time you look him in the eye and say, not loud, not mean, just clear, that's mine, please don't touch it. And you don't look away first. Leo considered this with the gravity the situation deserved. What if he still doesn't stop? Then you tell Miss Park. But start with the eyes, she held his gaze. The eyes matter. People know whether you mean something. Leo looked at his father, then back at Sarah, then practiced the look on his pasta. Good, Sarah said. That's good. Lorenzo across the table was quiet in the way she was learning meant he was paying close attention. After Leo had been taken to bed, a process involving 3 rounds of 5 more minutes and 1 negotiation about whether the drawing he'd made for Sarah could live on her nightstand, which it could, the house settled, and Lorenzo poured 2 glasses of something amber and set one in front of her without asking. The Ashworth Foundation Gala, he said sitting down, start to finish everyone in the room. He talked, she listened, she asked questions, sharp ones, specific ones, the kind that made him pause occasionally and look at her with that recalibrating expression. She asked about the relationships between the families, the financial ties, who owed what to whom, who smiled at Lorenzo in public and called Russo privately. She built a map in her head the same way she'd built maps of every ballroom she'd ever worked this person near, this door, that person needing this thing, the whole invisible structure of power that everyone pretended wasn't there. The Marchetti family, she said. You said they're nominally neutral. They've been neutral for 6 years. But before that, a pause. They were allied with the Russos. What changed 6 years ago? Lorenzo looked at her steadily. Vincent Russo made a decision that cost the Marchettis something they couldn't recover. What decision? Their son, Lorenzo said quietly. Matteo Marchetti, he was 22. The word was sat between them. Sarah absorbed this, and they stayed neutral. They didn't retaliate. They couldn't. Russo made sure of that. He paused. But neutral is not the same as forgiven. Sarah turned her glass slowly. So at this dinner, if I were to find myself near Angela Marchetti. Carmela, he said. Angela's the daughter. Carmela is the matriarch. She's the one who matters. If I were near Carmela Marchetti, Sarah said, and I were to be human, warm, ask about her family, nothing strategic, just genuine. Lorenzo was quiet for a moment. You're thinking about shifting the neutral. I'm thinking about the fact that a woman who lost her son to Vincent Russo might have opinions about what he does next. She met his eyes. I'm not talking about deals or alliance. I'm talking about being a person to her, in a room full of performances. Lorenzo looked at her for a long time. You've never done this before, he said. Not a challenge, something closer to wonder. I've spent 9 years being invisible in rooms like that, Sarah said. I know exactly what people look like when they're performing, and exactly what they look like when they want someone to stop performing at them. She paused. I know what lonely looks like in expensive rooms. I saw it every single shift. The amber liquid caught the light. You're going to surprise people, Lorenzo said. Good, dear, good, Sarah said. Surprised people make honest reactions. The next 2 days moved fast and strange. Physical therapy in the mornings, which hurt more than she let anyone see. Afternoons with Leo, who had appointed himself her activity coordinator and had a full schedule prepared, covering everything from card games to an extremely ambitious building project involving every pillow in the library. Evenings with briefings, going through the guest list name by name until the map in her head was solid. She was good at it. She'd always been good at it, absorbing people, reading them, holding the information precisely. Lorenzo noticed. He didn't say anything directly, but the questions he started asking her at the end of each session changed less explanatory, more like he was thinking out loud and had decided her thinking was worth including. On the evening before the gala, he came to find her in the library. Late past 10, Leo long since asleep. I need to tell you something, he said. His voice was different. Not the controlled evenness she'd come to read as his default, not the careful deliberateness he used in briefings. Something raw underneath. She set down the guest list. Tell me. He sat, clasped his hands, looked at them for a second, which was unusual for a man who typically held eye contact like it was a resource he was protecting. Elena, he said, my wife, Leo's mother. Sarah went still. She didn't want this life, he said. She never did. I knew that when we married. I told myself it would be different, that I could build walls high enough that it wouldn't touch her. A pause. I was wrong. Sarah said nothing. She understood this was not a conversation that needed her words yet. Russo didn't kill Tersquire, Lorenzo said. She was sick, genuinely sick, nothing to do with any of this. But the stress, the fear she lived with every day, the way she had to smile at events and shake hands with people she was terrified of. His jaw tightened. I've wondered for 4 years how much of that contributed. Lorenzo, I'm telling you this, he said, looking up, because you are about to walk into a room that Elena walked into 3 dozen times, and she walked out of every one of them smaller than she went in. He held her gaze. I don't want that for you. I want you to know that if at any point tomorrow night you wanted to leave for any reason with no explanation required, we leave. Immediately, without discussion. The room was very quiet. Sarah looked at this man, this complicated, dangerous, exhausted man who had somehow just made himself completely vulnerable in a way that clearly cost him something real. I appreciate that, she said carefully, and I need you to hear me. I'm not Elena. I know. I don't mean that harshly. I mean, I'm not doing this because I'm afraid of saying no. I'm going because I've decided it's the right move. She paused. There's a difference between a woman who goes because she has no choice and a woman who goes because she's chosen to fight. Those two women walk into that room differently. Lorenzo held her gaze. And which one are you? The second one, Sarah said simply. I've been the first one my whole life. I know what that feels like. This isn't it. Something settled in his face. Not relief exactly, something deeper, like a knot that had been there for 4 years had loosened just slightly. There's something else, he said. More, Russo knows you'll be there tomorrow. I received a message this afternoon. His voice returned to its even register, but she heard the strain underneath it now, could place it in a way she couldn't have 2 weeks ago. He's requested a face-to-face at the dinner. Public civil brief. Sarah's pulse kicked up once. She steadied it. He wants to look me in the eyes. Yes. And you want to? I want to decline, he said flatly. Every instinct I have says to decline. But, he looked at her. Declining reads as fear. Accepting reads as confidence. He paused. The decision affects you most. So it's yours. Sarah absorbed this. She thought about Russo's voice on the phone, smooth, patient, absolutely certain of his own intelligence. She thought about what it would mean for him to stand across from her and see what fear uncertainty. A waitress playing dress-up, she thought about what she'd told Leo. The eyes matter. People know whether you mean something. We accept, she said. Lorenzo didn't move for a moment. Are you sure? He called me to test my loyalty, she said. Tomorrow night, I want to look him in the face and let him figure out exactly what he's dealing with. She met Lorenzo's eyes. He underestimated me once already. Let's let him keep doing it. A long beat. The car is at 7, Lorenzo said. I'll be ready at 6:50. He stood, paused at the door. There was something in the set of his shoulders that she recognized now. The particular way he held himself when he wanted to say something and had decided against it, the armor going up, the moment closing. Lorenzo, he stopped. Whatever you were going to say, she said quietly, you can say it. He turned slightly, not all the way. I was going to say that Elena would have... He stopped, started again. That Leo is lucky, he said. That you're here, that he has someone who... Another stop, he couldn't finish it. But he didn't need to. Get some sleep, Sarah said. Actually, this time, I'll know if you didn't. He left. She sat alone in the library and looked at the drawing Leo had given her, which she'd been carrying in her pocket since he handed it to her. Me and Sarah. 2 stick figures, both upright, both taking up space. She thought about tomorrow night. Russo's eyes across a crowded room. The weight of everyone watching. The wheelchair she'd been told she might still need for long events. 3 bullets still making themselves known every time she turned too fast. She thought about standing up anyway. She thought the eyes matter. People know whether you mean something. She folded the drawing carefully, put it back in her pocket, and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be a fight. She intended to win it. She was ready at 6:49. Lorenzo was already in the entrance hall when she came down, and she watched him register her. The whole of her, the dress Rosa had selected, the way she moved the shoulder she was carrying, carefully but not obviously, and something shifted in his expression before he put it back where it belonged. You look, he started. Functional, she said. I look functional. Let's go. Marco held the car door. Lorenzo got in beside her. Neither of them spoke for the first 2 blocks, which Sarah had come to understand was his version of giving her space to settle. The wheelchair, he said finally. Marco has it in the second car. If at any point... I know, she said. I'll ask for it if I need it. There's no weakness in Lorenzo. She turned to look at him directly. I know. I'm not fighting the wheelchair out of pride. I'm making a calculation. Walking in on my own 2 feet is a message. I'll use the chair if the message stops being worth the cost. She paused. I understand the difference between stubbornness and strategy. He held her gaze. Yes, he said. You do. She turned back to the window. The city moved past them, all lit glass and yellow bomb in the particular energy of New York on a cold evening, everyone going somewhere, everyone carrying their own private weight. Tell me one thing about tonight, she said. One thing that's not in the briefing. He was quiet for a moment. Russo will be charming, he said. Genuinely charming, not performed. He has a quality that makes people feel seen, felt like he's the only person in the room paying attention to you. It's the most dangerous thing about Himesh. More dangerous than the men he sends with guns. Those you can see coming, Lorenzo said. The charm you can't. Sarah filed this. Is that what got Reyes 11 years and Russo charmed him out of it? Reyes had a daughter, medical issues. Russo found the crack and he worked it. Lorenzo's voice was flat. He always finds the crack. He tried with me, Sarah said. On the phone. He found the crack. He thought was there, the cage speech, the idea that you were controlling me. And it wasn't a crack, she said simply. He read the wrong blueprint. Lorenzo didn't say anything for a moment. Then quietly, how did you know that it was the wrong read? Sarah thought about it honestly. Because a cage is a place you're put, she said. I walked in. Those aren't the same thing. The car stopped. The Ashworth Foundation Gala was exactly the kind of event Sarah had worked 50 times and never attended. The difference she discovered immediately was weight. When you were carrying a tray, the room was a landscape to navigate. When you were in it, when the room was looking back at you, it became something else entirely. She felt the looks. She was practiced enough to receive them without reacting the assessment, the curiosity, the particular hunger of people who had heard a story and wanted to see the subject in person. The waitress who took 3 bullets. The woman Lorenzo Caruso married in a hospital room. She walked in beside him and kept her spine straight and her face open and calm the way she'd kept it through 100 difficult shifts, and she let them look. Lorenzo's hand was at the small of her back, light barely there but present. A signal she understood was for the room's benefit and didn't examine further. 12 o'clock, he said quietly. Carmela Marchetti. Sarah didn't look immediately. She finished the sentence she was in the greeting to a man named Ashworth, whose foundation this was, and who had the eager eyes of someone desperate to not appear impressed, and then let her gaze move naturally the way it had moved across ballrooms for 9 years. Carmela Marchetti was 73 years old and dressed in black, which Sarah understood immediately was not about fashion. She was standing slightly apart from the cluster around her, the way powerful people sometimes stand, not isolated, but with a quality of space that others maintained without being told to. Her face was composed and her eyes were sharp, and when they met Sarah's across the room, neither of them looked away. Sarah excused herself from Ashworth with a warmth that was genuine enough to satisfy him. "I'm going to go say hello to Mrs. Marchetti," she murmured to Lorenzo. She felt him go still beside her. Just slightly. "Sarah, not strategy," she said quietly. "I told you, just being a person." She crossed the room. Carmela watched her come with the expression of someone who has seen every approach and categorized them all, and is waiting to find out which one this is. "Mrs. Marchetti," Sarah said. "I'm Sarah Caruso. I wanted to introduce myself." A pause. Carmela's eyes moved across her face, reading, measuring, doing the same thing Sarah did, but with 70 years of practice behind it. "I know who you are," Carmela said. Her voice was low and accented slightly Italian underneath the American vowels. "You're the one who took the bullets." "Yes." "For the boy?" "Yes." Carmela looked at her for a long moment. "Why?" Sarah blinked. She hadn't expected that question. Most people wanted to know what it felt like, or whether she'd been scared, or what Lorenzo had said. Nobody had asked why. "I don't know exactly," she said honestly. "I just moved. I don't think there was a reason in the moment. He was just a child." Something shifted in Carmela Marchetti's face. Small, deep, like a word in a language Sarah had just demonstrated she knew. "I had a son," Carmela said. "I know," Sarah said quietly. "I'm sorry." Not "I heard," not "Lorenzo told me," just "I'm sorry." 2 words, simple and direct, with nothing behind them except the fact of them. Carmela was quiet for a moment. "You were a waitress," she said finally. "Yes." "Before all this?" "Yes." "And now you're here." Carmela's gaze moved briefly to Lorenzo across the room, then back. "How does that feel?" "Honestly," Sarah said, "like learning to walk in shoes that don't fit yet. Every step is deliberate." She paused. "But I'm learning the fit." Something that might have been the beginning of a smile crossed Carmela Marchetti's face, just the edge of one. "You're interesting," she said. "I wasn't expecting interesting." "What were you expecting?" "Pretty and frightened," Carmela said frankly. "Pretty and frightened is what men in Lorenzo's position usually produce." "I'm working on the pretty," Sarah said. "The frightened part I'm managing." The edge of the smile went a little further. Carmela reached out and briefly touched Sarah's hand. "Eat something tonight," she said. "They always forget to eat at these things. You need your strength." She paused. "Especially tonight." Sarah caught the weight of those last 2 words. "You know he's here," she said. Carmela's expression settled back into its composed arrangement. "I always know when Vincent Russo is in a room," she said. "It's a skill I've had for 6 years." She looked at Sarah steadily. "Don't let him set the terms. Whatever he says to you, whatever angle he comes from, don't let him choose the ground you fight on." "Thank you," Sarah said. She meant it completely. Carmela nodded once precise and looked away, the elegant dismissal of a woman who had made her decision and was done with the matter. Sarah turned back toward the room. Lorenzo was 20 feet away, talking to two men she recognized from the briefing, and his eyes were on her with an expression she was becoming fluent in, the one that meant she'd done something he hadn't predicted, and he was quietly rearranging his understanding of things. She crossed to him, accepted the glass someone offered her, and said nothing. He said nothing either. They didn't need to. Russo found them 40 minutes later. Or more precisely, he arranged to be found. Sarah saw it happen, the subtle orchestration of it, the way he worked the room, so that his path to them seemed accidental when it had clearly been plotted. She had to give him credit. He was very good. He was in his early 60s, medium height, silver-haired, with a face that had the practiced openness of a man who had decided somewhere around age 40 that warmth was the most effective weapon. He moved like someone who had never been uncertain in a room. And he smiled genuinely, the way Lorenzo had warned her, the smile of a man with real charm, the kind that came from actually paying attention. "Lorenzo," he said. His voice was warm, almost affectionate. "It's been too long." "Vincent," Lorenzo said. The same tone, the same warmth, identical in every way and absolutely hollow inside, like two experts performing the same piece of music and meaning completely different things by it. Then Russo turned to her, and she felt it. What Lorenzo had described, the specific quality of his attention, complete focused, making her feel like the most important person in the room in the span of 2 seconds. She felt it, and she cataloged it, and she kept her face easy. "Mrs. Caruso," he said, "I'm so glad you could be here tonight, given everything." His eyes moved briefly, deliberately to her shoulder. "How are you feeling?" "Much better," she said. "Thank you for asking." "You're extraordinary," he said, and the word landed with the gentleness of something very sharp moving slowly. "What you did for that boy. Most people would have, well," he smiled. "Most people wouldn't have moved." "Most people weren't there," she said. "No." He tilted his head slightly. "Tell me, in that moment, what did you feel?" Sarah looked at him. She took exactly 1 second. Then she said, "I didn't feel anything. I just moved. Feeling comes after." Something flickered in his eyes. Reassessment. She'd answered too quickly for performed courage and too cleanly for shock. He was recategorizing her. "A practical woman," he said approvingly. "I've had to be." He turned his glass slightly in his hand. "It must be quite an adjustment. From your previous life to," he gestured gently at the room, "all of this." "Everything is an adjustment until it isn't," she said. "And Lorenzo, is he an adjustment?" She felt Lorenzo go very still beside her. She smiled, easy, unhurried. "He's my husband," she said, "not a project." Russo smiled back. "Of course." He looked at Lorenzo. "You've made quite a choice," he said. "I have to say, I didn't see this coming." "That was rather the point," Lorenzo said. A beat. Two men looking at each other across 20 years of war, dressed in civility, and Sarah standing between them, not as a barrier, but as something else. She could feel it in the way the air between them moved. "I understand you received a call," Russo said. Still pleasant, still warm. His eyes moved to Sarah. "Shortly after your arrival at the house." He was telling her he knew. That he'd known the call would be reported, had expected it, possibly wanted it reported. She turned this over in her mind very fast. "I did," she said. "I hope it wasn't alarming." "Should it have been?" His smile held. "I like to welcome people personally," he said. "It's important to me that the people in Lorenzo's life know that they have options, that this world doesn't have to be as closed as it sometimes feels." A pause, delicate as a thread. "If you ever need anything, anything at all, I'm not as frightening as I'm made out to be." Sarah looked at him. She thought about Carmela Marchetti in black. She thought about Matteo Marchetti, 22 years old. She thought about Daniel Reyes and his daughter, and 11 years of trust turned inside out. She smiled. "That's very kind," she said. "I'll keep that in mind." His eyes moved across her face one more time, quick and thorough, looking for something. He didn't find it. "Wonderful to meet you, Sarah," he said. The first name without permission, deliberate. "Enjoy the evening." He moved away, easy, unhurried. Sarah watched him go. "That was," Lorenzo started low beside her. "He wanted me to react," she said just as quietly. "To the call, to the name drop, to the options word. He wanted to see if I'd freeze or flush or look at you for permission." And I didn't give him a readable moment, she said. He has no data. Lorenzo was quiet for 3 seconds. My security team, he said, spends weeks training for conversations like the one you just had. I spent 9 years learning to manage difficult people without them knowing they were being managed, Sarah said. Different school, same skill. The next hour moved in the particular way of events that are performing normalcy over something urgent conversation and drinks and the right smiles at the right moments. And underneath all of it, the constant awareness of Russo's position in the room of where he was and who he was speaking to and what those conversations might be producing. Sarah noticed the moment things changed. It was small. Russo across the room said something to the man beside him. The man's expression shifted just slightly, just for a second, and then he looked at Sarah. Not at Lorenzo, at Sarah specifically. She registered it and kept talking to the woman in front of her without breaking rhythm. 20 minutes later, she found Lorenzo near the bar. Third man from Russo's left, she said quietly without preamble. Gray jacket, gold watch. He looked at me after Russo spoke to him. Not curiosity instruction. Lorenzo's expression didn't change. You're sure? I'm sure. He didn't ask again. His name is Peter Galvin. He runs Russo's legitimate business interests. Why would Russo direct his attention at you specifically, Sarah thought? Because Russo didn't get what he needed from me directly. So he's triangulating. He's going to try to get information through another angle. Galvin's wife is here, Lorenzo said. She's... He stopped, looked at her. Where? Sarah said. Nearer the windows. Blue dress. Her name is Marie. Sarah turned naturally as if following the room's flow and found the woman. Mid-50s, careful posture, the specific kind of smile that meant she'd been doing this for years and found it exhausting. She doesn't want to be here, Sarah said. She never does. Then we have something in common. Sarah set her glass down. Don't follow me. Give me 10 minutes. Sarah, but she was already moving. Marie Galvin noticed her approach and went through the standard preparations. Smile, adjusting shoulders, squaring the full ballroom armor going up. And Sarah walked directly past all of it. I have to tell you something, Sarah said when she was close enough. I used to work these events for years, and the only people I ever genuinely felt for were the ones standing near windows with that specific face. Marie blinked. The armor had been designed for an entirely different approach. I'm sorry. The I would rather be anywhere face, Sarah said. I've had it myself. I've served people who had it. You have it tonight, she paused. I'm Sarah, by the way, Lorenzo's wife. I know you know that. Marie's expression went through 3 things in rapid succession. Yes, Marie Galvin. A pause. You're very direct. I used to not be, Sarah said. It cost me a lot. I stopped. She smiled genuinely, the real one, not the ballroom version. How long have you been coming to these things? 22 years, Marie said. The number came out of her without guard, like a confession. 22 years of windows. Something cracked in Marie Galvin's composure. Not broadly, just a small human fracture. Something like that, she said. And then quietly, your husband Lorenzo, is he... She stopped, started again differently. Are you safe? Sarah said. Marie looked at her. Happy, she said. The word surprised Sarah. She thought about it honestly the way she always thought about honest questions. I'm figuring that out, she said, but I made my own choice. That matters. Marie was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice had dropped to almost nothing. Peter said tonight before we came, he said Vincent wants to know if your marriage is real, whether you'll hold. She looked at Sarah directly. I shouldn't be telling you this. Why are you? Because you're the first person in 22 years who asked about the window face, Marie said simply. Sarah held her gaze. Thank you, she said quietly. That took courage. Please don't mention. Never, Sarah said. Not to anyone, not ever. Marie nodded once fast and looked away. Her hand was slightly unsteady on her glass. Sarah walked back across the room. Lorenzo saw her face when she reached him. What happened? Russo's running a test tonight, she said quietly. He wants to know if our marriage is real, whether I'll hold under pressure. She paused. He sent Galvin to angle toward me through Marie. And Marie told you this? Yes. Why, Because I asked her a real question instead of a strategic one, Sarah said. People are starving for real questions in rooms like this. Lorenzo was looking at her with that expression again, the one she'd been trying to name for weeks. She was getting closer to it. It was something between astonishment and recognition, like meeting a word in a foreign language that matches something you'd felt but never been able to say. He's going to make a move tonight, Lorenzo said. Me waiting for the data, he already has enough. Whatever Galvin reported, he knows I'm not a weak point, Sarah said, which means he'll stop treating me like one and start treating me like a threat. Yes. Good, she said. Lorenzo looked at her. You understand that being a threat in Russo's world is... I know what it is, she said. I also know that being invisible didn't protect me at the Pierre. Invisible people get shot too. She met his eyes. I'd rather be seen and dangerous than unseen and available. Something settled in his face than something that had been held taut for a long time, releasing very slightly. There's going to be a public moment, he said. Tonight, Russo will create one. He'll say something in front of witnesses that's designed to diminish you, to make you react visibly or not react and seem weak. It's how he works. What does he usually say, Pum? He'll question your origins, where you came from, the implication that you don't belong. Lorenzo's voice was careful and even. He did the same to Elena the first time she appeared publicly. He stopped. She didn't have the material yet, Sarah said gently. She didn't know enough. No, a breath. She came home and didn't leave the house for 2 weeks. Sarah looked at him. She saw 4 years of that in his face, 4 years of carrying it, of wondering what he could have done differently, of building higher walls after the fact. I have the material, she said. He held her gaze. I know. Trust me, she said. Not a plea, a statement. I do, he said. And the simplicity of it, not I'm trying to or I think I do, landed differently than she expected. The moment didn't get to exist long. Across the room, Vincent Russo had moved to a position that Sarah recognized, central, elevated, slightly surrounded by the right people. The position of someone about to say something for an audience. His eyes found hers across the room. He smiled. Here we go, she said quietly. Russo raised his glass, easy, casual, the gesture of a man at ease. I have to say, nay, he said in the caring voice of someone used to rooms listening. It warms the heart to see Lorenzo looking so settled. It's been a difficult few years. He smiled around the room, drawing the circle in. And his wife Sarah, isn't it a remarkable story, from serving at events like this one to attending them? A pause perfectly timed, quite a distance to travel. The room did the thing rooms do, a slight collective adjustment, the almost imperceptible lean of people aware that something has been said that requires a response. Sarah felt it. Every eye. The weight of the moment, Russo's calculated condescension wrapped in charm, the implication laid out neatly. You don't belong here and everyone knows it. She had maybe 4 seconds before the moment curdled. She straightened, and she spoke clearly, warmly, with the ease of someone who had never for 1 second doubted her right to be in this room. It is a remarkable distance, she said, and her voice carried without effort the voice she'd developed across hundreds of events. I've been in rooms like this my whole career. I know what goes into them, the work, the people, the effort that makes an evening like this possible. She smiled, direct and unperformable. The difference is tonight I can look Vincent in the eye instead of looking at the floor. She paused, one beat. I have to say the view from this angle is very educational. A sound moved through the room, not laughter, something better, the sound of people recalibrating. Russo's smile held, but his eyes didn't. He raised his glass slightly, the minimal acknowledgement of a man who has been answered cleanly and knows it. Beautifully said, he said. Sarah raised her glass in return. Said nothing. Let the silence do its work. Lorenzo's hand found the small of her back, the same position as when they'd walked in, but different now. Not a signal for the room. Just his hand steady and present, and she felt him breathe beside her. Carmela Marchetti from across the room caught Sarah's eye. The older woman tilted her head, just slightly, the smallest possible acknowledgement from a woman who did not give them freely. Sarah held it for 1 second, then looked away. They left at 10:30. Leo was asleep when they arrived home. Rosa reported with the particular satisfaction of someone who considers a child in bed on time a personal achievement. The house was quiet. Marco took the car. The door closed behind them, and suddenly the evening was over, all that weight of performance and attention and controlled precision simply done. Sarah sat down on the stairs without planning to, just sat because her legs had decided that was enough. Lorenzo sat beside her, not across from her, not a careful distance away, beside her, close enough that his arm was against hers. They sat like that for a moment. "Marie Galvin," he said, "you have to know that what she did telling you, what she told you, has consequences for her." "I know," Sarah said. "I meant what I told her. Not a word to anyone." "I wasn't questioning that," he said. He paused. "I was noting that you made a friend tonight in a place where people don't make friends." Another pause. "I don't think you realize what you did in that room. I had a conversation and gave a toast. You rebuilt something," he said quietly. "Something I've been losing ground on for 4 years. The way Carmela Marchetti looked at you, I've been trying to reach that woman for 4 years. She won't take my calls." "I didn't reach her strategically," Sarah said. "I just talked to her like a person." "No," Lorenzo said. "That's the point." She turned to look at him. This close in the quiet, after everything, he looked like himself, not the version he constructed for rooms and meetings and 15 years of war, but something underneath that. Someone who was tired and real and sitting on a staircase at 10:30 because his legs had also had enough. "You said you trust me," she said. "I do." "Then I need you to tell me something true," she said. "Now, not strategy, not briefing, something real." She held his gaze. "What are you most afraid of right now?" He was quiet for long enough that she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then, "That I've done to you what I did to Elena," he said. "Pulled you into something you can't get out of and watched it cost you things you can't get back." The staircase was very quiet. "There's a difference," Sarah said. "I knew what I was walking into." She didn't. "Not really," she paused. "And I walked toward it." She was led. "You didn't know the half of it," he said. "No, but I knew enough to make a real choice." She looked at him steadily. "You're not responsible for what I chose." "I presented the choice in a hospital room 3 days after you were shot," he said. "You weren't exactly in a position to." "Lorenzo." She kept her voice even. "I'm from Queens. I've been making impossible choices in difficult conditions my entire life. I know the difference between a coerced decision and a real one." She paused. "This was a real one." He looked at her for a long moment. Why?" he said finally. And it was the same question Carmela had asked naked, direct underneath all the layers. "Why?" Sarah thought about Leo's drawing in her pocket. She thought about Danny's voice on the phone, the way it had gone quiet when she said, "I'll call you tonight." She thought about this man sitting beside her on the stairs at 10:30, finally out of armor. "Because Leo put his hands around mine in that hospital room," she said simply. "And because you sat there all 14 hours. And because..." She stopped, found the rest of it. "Because the world I had before wasn't what I was waiting for either. I just didn't have another option yet." The silence that followed was a different kind from the silences she learned to read in this house. Not taught, not calculating, not the quiet of a man managing something, just quiet. Lorenzo looked at his hands. Then slowly he reached over and placed his hand over hers on the step. Same gesture Leo had made in the hospital. The same simple, unguarded thing, and the echo of it hit her somewhere deep. "Russo isn't finished," he said. "I know. Tonight was the opening. He'll come again harder from a different angle. He now knows you're not a liability." "Which means..." "I know what it means," she said. She didn't move her hand. "We'll be ready." He didn't move his hand either. Yeah, he said, quietly, like he was testing the word. She said. Above them, from somewhere down the hall, came the small sound of Leo turning over in his sleep, the particular creak of a child redistributing himself across a too-big bed. Both of them heard it, both of them sat still. And in the quiet of that house full of danger and loyalty, and one small boy who had drawn 2 stick figures side by side and called it me and Sarah something that had been building slowly since a hospital room, and a judge at noon, and a staircase in Queens that cost too much and wasn't enough, something finally settled. Not resolved, not finished, just settled the way a foundation settles, deep and real and ready to hold. Outside, the city kept moving. Inside, neither of them moved at all. 3 days after the Ashworth Gala, Vincent Russo made his next move. It didn't come in the form Sarah expected. No phone call, no orchestrated public moment, no man in a black vest. It came in the form of a manila envelope delivered to the house at 7 in the morning, addressed not to Lorenzo, but to her. Her full name, her old name, Sarah Miller, written by hand in ink that pressed deep into the paper like someone making a point. Rosa brought it to her at breakfast without a word, set it beside the eggs and stood back. Sarah opened it. Inside were photographs. Her taken over what appeared to be several days entering the physical therapy clinic, standing at the window of the library walking Leo to the car for school. And beneath the photographs, a single sheet of paper with 4 words printed in the center. "We see you clearly." Her hands were completely steady. She turned the paper over. Nothing on the back. She looked at the photographs again, methodically noting the angles, which windows, which distances, which moments. She was gathering information the way she gathered everything now, precisely and without panic, because panic was just fear without direction, and she had learned that fear with direction was something else entirely. She took the envelope and walked to Lorenzo's office. He was on the phone when she entered. He looked at her face, said, "I'll call you back," and hung up before the other person could respond. She put the envelope on the desk. He went through it the same way she had, methodically, without visible reaction, which she now understood meant the reaction was happening at a level he'd trained himself to keep internal. When he finished, he set the photographs down and looked at her. "You're not frightened," he said. "I'm calculating," she said. "There's a difference. We established this." "The clinic angle," he started. "Third floor window of the building across the street," she said. "The library shot was taken from outside the east wall, which means someone was on the property, not the street." She held his gaze. "You have a perimeter problem." Something moved in his expression. "I identified the perimeter problem 2 days ago, and it's been addressed." He stood, came around the desk, looked at the photographs again from beside her. "This envelope was meant to frighten you, to make you feel watched and exposed and unsafe inside what should be your home." "I know what it was meant to do," she said. "Does it work?" He asked it directly without softness, and she understood he needed the honest answer, not the brave one. She thought about it. "The watched part lands," she said honestly. "I'd be lying if I said it didn't. Walking through this house this morning felt different than it did yesterday." She paused. "But frightened is different from watched. Frightened makes you smaller. This just made me more precise." Lorenzo looked at her for a long moment. "Russo is trying to force a timeline," he said. "He's accelerating. This," he touched the edge of the envelope, "is not patience. This is urgency. Something has changed on his side." "What? I need to make some calls." He looked at her. "I need you to take Leo to school yourself this morning, not Marco, you." She blinked. "That's a change in protocol." "Yes," his voice was careful. "I need Russo to see that this," he gestured at the envelope, "produced the opposite of what he intended. I need him to see you moving freely, visibly, without looking over your shoulder." "You're using me as a message again," she said. "I'm asking," he said. "Ma deciding, asking." She thought about the difference. She thought about the first morning the job that had been resigned without her knowledge and how far they'd come from that. "Okay," she said, "but I want Marco on the block, not with me just present." "Done," he paused. "Sarah." "I know," she said. "Be precise. Don't look up at windows. Let Leo talk about Ms. Park the whole way there, and look like a woman who has all the time in the world." His jaw shifted, the almost smile closer than usual to an actual one. "Something like that." She turned to go. "The envelope," he said behind her. "How did you know which window?" She stopped. "The shadow angle on the photograph of the clinic entrance. The sun was at 9 o'clock. The shadow falls northeast at that degree only from the 3rd floor across the street." She looked back at him. 9 years of watching where light comes from. You learn the angles." She left him standing there with the envelope and the photographs and whatever it was he was doing with his expression that she had decided for now not to examine. Leo talked about Miss Park the entire way to school. Not just Miss Park, also Marcus, who had apparently responded to the eye contact strategy with mixed results, but overall improvement in a project about the solar system that Leo felt was being underserved by the materials provided, and a joke he'd heard from his friend Coop that he delivered with the confidence of someone who was not entirely sure they understood it, but had committed to the bit regardless. Sarah walked at his pace and listened and asked the right questions and did not look up at windows. When they reached the school entrance, Leo stopped and turned to her with the sudden seriousness that children produce without warning out of nowhere like weather. "Are you coming back?" he asked. She looked at him. "To pick you up." "No." He was looking at her steadily, his father's eyes in his small face. "Are you staying with us? For real?" Her chest did the thing it did around this child that she still hadn't found a name for. "Yes," she said, "I'm staying." "Promise." She crouched down, ignoring the pull in her shoulder. Level with him, eye to eye. "Leo, look at me." He did. "I promise, Yang." He studied her face for 3 full seconds with the thoroughness of someone checking whether a thing is true or just said. Then, apparently satisfied, he nodded once and turned and walked into school with his backpack listing to one side and his tie already going crooked and every bit of him already in the next thing. Sarah stood up. Marco was half a block behind her, looking at his phone with the profound casualness of a man paid to appear unremarkable. She didn't acknowledge him. She turned and walked home at exactly the pace of a woman who had all the time in the world. Lorenzo's calls produced something by noon. He came to find her in the library. She was there again in the window seat, which she'd privately decided was hers now, and sat down across from her with the look of someone carrying news that has multiple weights to it. "Russo is under pressure," he said, "from inside. There's a faction of his own people who've been watching the Marchetti situation for 6 years and reassessing." Sarah went still. "Carmela Marchetti." "She made 3 phone calls yesterday," Lorenzo said. "I don't know the content, but I know who she called." He paused. 2 of them were men who have been neutral for years. The third was someone inside Russo's organization. "She moved," Sarah said quietly. "She moved," he confirmed. "Whatever happened between the 2 of you at that dinner?" "I told you, I just talked to her." "You talked to her the way she hadn't been talked to in 6 years, Lorenzo said. "There's a difference." He leaned forward. This changes his timeline further. If his own people are questioning if he sees the Marchetti ground shifting, he's going to act, not in weeks, days. What does acting look like? Direct. Lorenzo's voice was flat and precise. He'll go direct when strategy stops working. It's how he's always operated patience until patience runs out, then force. He paused. "Which means Leo." The word landed in the room like a stone. "Tell me exactly," Sarah said. "He'll try to take Leo," Lorenzo said. "While here, the house is secure. Outside, a window, school therapy, anything routine." He looked at her steadily. "We're pulling Leo from school for the next 2 weeks. I've arranged." "He'll know something is wrong," Sarah said immediately. "Leo is smart. If the routine breaks without explanation, he'll feel the fear even if no one tells him what it is. Children feel it in the air." She paused. "I'll work with him at home. I'll make it feel like a choice, not a lockdown." Lorenzo studied her. "Can you do that?" "I've been doing it," she said. "I've been managing what he feels and what he doesn't need to carry since I got here." "Yes, I can do it." She held his gaze. "But I need you to be home more. He notices when you're not here." Something crossed Lorenzo's face that she'd learned to recognize as a thing he was feeling that he didn't have a polished response to. "I know what you've been managing," she said. "I'm not criticizing. I'm telling you what Leo needs." A pause. "And what he needs is both of us, present, calm, like the house is normal." Lorenzo was quiet. "Can you do that?" she asked, returning his question. "Yes," he said. And then more quietly, "I'll have to restructure several." "I know it costs you something," she said. "I'm still asking." He nodded once, the nod of a man making a real commitment. "Good," Sarah said. "Then we have a plan." The next 5 days were the strangest of Sarah's life, including the days that had preceded them. The house became a kind of deliberate normalcy. Leo studying at the kitchen table while Rosa made enough food for twice their number, Lorenzo appearing for dinner every night with the careful punctuality of someone honoring a commitment. They'd made Sarah running physical therapy exercises in the library while Leo did his solar system project across from her, asking periodic questions about Jupiter that she answered as accurately as she could and occasionally invented when she couldn't. She did not tell Leo about the photographs. She did not tell him about Russo or the timeline or any of it. What she told him when he asked why he wasn't going to school was that they were having a family week because sometimes families needed that, and that Miss Park had been informed and had sent work home, which was both true and had caused Leo to have complicated feelings. A family week, Leo had repeated, testing the concept. Yes, Sarah said. He thought about it. Do we get to choose what we eat? Within reason. What's the reason, Rosa? Sarah said. He'd accepted this and gone back to Jupiter. On the third evening, Lorenzo came home at 6:15 and sat down at the kitchen table without going to his office first, which had never happened before. Leo looked up from his homework, registered this deviation, and said nothing, but something in his posture changed, relaxed slightly in a way that made Sarah's chest do the thing again. Jupiter, Leo said to his father by way of greeting. What about it? Lorenzo said. It has 80-some moons. Sarah says no one has agreed on the exact number yet because they keep finding more. That seems like a management problem, Lorenzo said. Leo considered this seriously. Yes, he agreed. Someone should be in charge of the moons. I volunteer, Lorenzo said. Leo looked at him. A smile broke across in his face, real and unguarded, the full thing, and Sarah watched Lorenzo receive it and felt something shift in the room's atmosphere that she understood was not about Russo or Marchetti or timelines. It was just a father and his son at a kitchen table. She went to help Rosa with dinner and gave them the space. The call came on day 5. Not to Sarah's phone this time, to Lorenzo's at 11 in the evening, when Leo was asleep and the house was quiet and Sarah and Lorenzo were in the sitting room with separate books they were both pretending to read. He looked at the screen. Something changed in his face. He answered. She watched his expression. 3 minutes, mostly listening. 2 short questions she couldn't hear. Then he hung up and sat for a moment without speaking. Tell me, she said. Russo made a mistake, Lorenzo said. His voice was different, precise in a way that had a current running beneath it. He reached out to Carmela Marchetti directly. Tonight, he wanted to contain the situation, to remind her of what he was capable of. And Carmela Marchetti recorded the conversation, Lorenzo said. Completely. Every word. Sarah went very still. She had someone there, Lorenzo said. She's been preparing this for weeks. The phone call she made that after the gala she was setting it up, building the documentation. He looked at Sarah. She sent the recording to 4 people simultaneously tonight, including 2 federal contacts and 1 man inside Russo's organization who has been waiting for exactly this kind of material for 3 years. The room was very quiet. She didn't do this before the gala, Sarah said slowly. She'd been waiting for what? What changed? Lorenzo looked at her with that expression, the one she'd been trying to name for weeks. You, he said simply. She stared at him. I had 1 conversation with her. You had 1 real conversation with her, he said. In 6 years, Sarah, 6 years of everyone in this world treating her like a piece on a board. 6 years of people speaking to her position, her role, her neutrality, her usefulness. He paused. You asked about the window face. The words sat between them. She told me something that night, Sarah said half to herself. She said, don't let him set the terms. I thought she was giving me advice. She looked at Lorenzo. She was also describing what she was about to do. Yes, he said. Sarah sat with this, the weight of it, a 73-year-old woman in black carrying 6 years of grief and patience waiting for a single real conversation before she was willing to move. And a waitress from Queens who'd asked the right question without knowing it was the right question. Is it enough? She asked. The recording, is it enough to stop him? It removes his protection, Lorenzo said, the legitimate cover he's operated under. Without it, he's exposed to the federals, to his own people, to the families who've tolerated him because they believed he was untouchable. He paused. He's not untouchable anymore. But not tonight, she said. Tonight he's still. Tonight I have 6 men on this house and 4 on Leo's room specifically, Lorenzo said. Tonight we are completely covered. He held her gaze. It's over, Sarah. Not finished. These things are never finished overnight. But the shape has changed, fundamentally. She absorbed this. Leo, she said, goes back to school Monday, Lorenzo said, with the same security he's always had and a little more that he won't notice. She exhaled slowly. She hadn't known how much she'd been holding in her chest until it moved. "And us," she said. The word hung in the room the way we had hung on the staircase 4 days ago, carefully, deliberately carrying more than its surface weight. Lorenzo looked at her. He set down the book he hadn't been reading. "I want to say something," and he said, "and I need you to let me finish it before you respond." She waited. "When I sat beside your hospital bed," he said, "I made a calculation, a strategic one. You were an asset. You'd saved Leo. You were brave. You were the right person to bring inside for a dozen practical reasons." He paused. "I want to be honest about that. I'm not going to pretend I walked in there purely out of sentiment." "I know," she said. "I didn't think you did. But something happened that I didn't calculate," he said. "You argued with me 4 minutes after waking up from surgery. You told me I'd overstepped about the job before you'd even had coffee. You ate Rose's eggs because Leo asked you to." He stopped, started again. "You sat with Carmela Marchetti and asked about her face. You stood up in that ballroom and answered Russo in front of everyone with your shoulders still healing and made it look like you'd been doing it your whole life." He looked at her directly. "None of that was calculation. None of that was the plan. That was—" He stopped again, and she could see him working for the word the way he worked for things he wasn't used to needing. "That was you. Just you." The sitting room was very quiet. "I'm telling you," he said, "that what started as strategy has become something that I would not want to be without. That this house is different because you're in it. That Leo is different. That I am, He stopped. The armor flickered. "I am different." Sarah looked at him for a long moment. She thought about the woman she'd been 5 weeks ago, the flats with no insoles, the $200, the lying to Danny that everything was fine. The exhaustion that had become so familiar she'd stopped naming it. The life that was hers and was barely enough. She thought about walking into this house in a wheelchair she didn't want. She thought about Rosa and the eggs and Leo's drawing in her pocket and Carmela Marchetti's hand on hers and a staircase at 10:30 and a man who had sat by her bed for 14 hours without being asked. She thought about 3 bullets and what they'd cost and what they'd opened. "Lorenzo," she said. He waited. "I came into this because I made a real choice," she said. "That hasn't changed. But I need you to know," she found the words carefully the way she'd found everything carefully since she'd learned that precision mattered. "The choice I made in that hospital room was the right one for Danny and for Leo and for survival." That was true. She held his gaze. "The choice I'm making right now is different. It's not survival. It's not strategy. It's not a calculation." She paused. "It's just that this is where I want to be." He didn't move. He barely seemed to breathe. "In this house," she said, "with Leo, with Rosa and her face, with you." Something happened in Lorenzo Caruso's expression that she had never seen before, not the almost smile, not the reassessment, not the careful management of everything underneath. All of it simply fell away. What was left was just a man, tired and real and present. He reached over and took her hand. Not the tentative way Leo had done it, not the signal to the room way at the gala. Deliberately, like a decision being made and kept at the same time. She let him. They sat there like that for a while. No words. The house around them breathing quietly. Leo asleep down the hall. Rosa's kitchen clean and dark, the city outside, doing what the city always did, moving relentless, indifferent. Inside, nothing was indifferent. Monday morning, Leo went back to school. Sarah walked him to the car. He had his backpack on both shoulders, which she'd been advocating for and which he'd finally agreed to on the condition that it didn't look babyish, which she'd assured him it didn't. His tie was crooked. She straightened it. He led her with the patience of a child who has decided this is one of the things that will happen now and has made peace with it. "What's today?" she asked. "Solar system presentation," he said. "I'm doing Jupiter." "Tell them about the moons." "How many you out there?" "As many as you want," she said. "Tell them no one's agreed on the exact number yet because they keep finding more." He grinned. "That's the good part." "That's always the good part," she said. "The part where there's more than anyone expected." He climbed into the car. Marco closed the door. Through the window, Leo pressed his palm flat against the glass for a second. A small private gesture, 5 fingers and a look. And then he was looking forward already in the next thing. Sarah stood there for a moment after the car pulled away. She thought about 5 weeks ago, the Pierre Hotel and the champagne tray and the man with the still quality who stood against the east wall. 3 sounds, 3 points of impact, a floor coming up fast. She thought about everything that had followed the judge at noon, the phone call, the gala, the staircase, the envelope. Carmela Marchetti's hand on hers, a recording sent to 4 people simultaneously, and a man in a sitting room who had said, "I would not want to be without this," and meant every word of it. She thought about what it cost to move, really move, the way she'd moved in that ballroom, and what it opened. She had been invisible her entire life. She had been exhausted and dutiful and sufficient and small, not because anyone had made her small, but because small was what survival required, and she had been very, very good at surviving. She was done surviving. She turned and walked back into the house, her house, in the most real sense of the word now, not by title or strategy or legal documentation, but by the full weight of 5 weeks of choosing it day by day with every resource she had. Rosa was in the kitchen. Lorenzo was in his office, leaving in an hour, back by 6. Leo was in the car, heading toward Jupiter in 80-some moons, and a presentation that was going to be very good because he'd practiced it on her 4 times, and she'd pushed him to find the good part every single time. Sarah poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. Rosa looked at her. That same assessing look from the first day. You're thinner than the last one, but different now. 6 weeks of eggs and faces, and the particular regard of a woman who forms opinions slowly and holds them absolutely. You look settled, Rosa said. I am, Sarah said. Rosa nodded once. The nod of a woman who considers the matter closed. She turned back to the stove. Sarah wrapped both hands around the coffee cup and sat in the warmth of it. She was not the waitress from Queens anymore. She was not the woman who lied to her brother, who counted $200 like it was oxygen, who wore shoes with no insoles and told herself she was managing. She was not what she'd been before, and she was not a performance, and she was not furniture, and she was not a pawn or a prop or anything constructed by someone else's need. She was Sarah Caruso by choice, by courage, by 3 bullets in 14 hours, and a child's hands around hers, and a man on a staircase at 10:30 who had finally, at the cost of everything he'd built to protect himself, told the truth. She was exactly where she had chosen to be, and she intended to stay.